Okay. Just one more thing about Pinyan Ben, which is an interesting argument, but the halacha is that you do. And that is, what happens if the doctors have to take out the baby with forceps? Sometimes the baby doesn't want to come out, and then they have to take like tongs or forceps, they're called in English, to take out the baby. So there's one opinion that says if that's the case, you don't have to do a Pinyan Ben. Why? Because the forceps actually separate. When the baby comes out, it's not touching the walls of the womb. If it's not touching the walls of the womb, so then it's not the firstborn. But the halacha is not like that. Everybody disagrees. And the halacha is it would still mean. Okay. Next dinim here in Kitzur is the dinim of Chinuch of children. Educating children. Now, there's a mitzvah, according to most opinions, it's rabbinic. There's a rabbinic obligation on a father to educate his small children in all mitzvahs of the Torah, whether they're biblical mitzvahs, rabbinic mitzvahs. If a father has an obligation to educate the children in the path of Torah mitzvahs. Now, most opinions say, and that's what Alter Rebbe holds also, that it's only on the father. There are opinions that say it's also an obligation on the mother. In fact, there's a Rashi at the beginning, a Chagiga that they all bring down. It's a famous Rashi. Rashi says that Chinuch is on the father and mother. And there are poskim that hold that. A majority of poskim, including the Alter Rebbe, holds that the mitzvah of Chinuch is primarily on the father. He is the one that's obligated to do it. Nevertheless, the Rebbe said this many, many times, especially when he's speaking to women, that even though the halachic obligation is on the father, but realistically speaking, it's usually on the mother because she's home. And she's the one that's dealing directly with the child itself. Now, the din is you have to educate the children based on their level. That means, and it also depends what the mitzvah is. I'll give you an example. It says that if the child understands the concept of Shabbos, you have to educate him in the dinim of Shabbos. When he is old enough to understand the concept of kosher, you have to educate him in the point of kosher. But one thing is for sure, the father is never allowed to give something not kosher directly to a baby. Even though the baby, usually the age of Chinuch is 6 or 7. That's what it says in Chinuch. So therefore, it means like this. If the kid on his own, halachic, I'm talking pure halacha now. If the kid on his own, a 4-year-old kid, takes something not kosher, the father doesn't have an obligation to stop him. Nowadays, the custom is you stop him anyway. You don't want the kid eating non-kosher. But even if a baby's 2 years old, 1 year old, a father cannot give them directly in their mouth something forbidden. So there's a difference between stopping the child from doing something wrong or actually assisting the child from doing something wrong. Assisting is a child to do something wrong, a father is always obligated to do. You can't help.
They draw on Chabad. 4 years
So
old.
if the kid's 4 years old, again, in technical halacha, the father does not have to stop him because the kid is under the age of chinuch. Ideally, if the father can explain to the child that, it's something you don't do, but there's also in halacha, for instance, a little kid under the age of 6 or 7 that wants to walk to shul, and let's say a situation where there's no Erev, and the kid wants to carry a bag of nash, candies, cookies, whatever. So then, because he's doing it for himself, and he's not at the age of chinuch yet, you're allowed to let him do it. And you could even, I'm saying if in a situation where there's no Erev, okay, or you don't go by the Erev, whatever the situation is. So the father wouldn't, in fact, the father can even give it to the child, because then the child is doing it for their own personal benefit, and they're not obligated in that thing.
Do you carry anything yourself, Robert? Anything?
Can you?
Because, no, because there is error. Is there anything that you carry? Or not?
You asking me personally?
Yes, please.
Number one, I'm going to answer personal questions.
Okay.
Now, number one, I carry my weight.
Okay. That's it?
That's it.
Handkerchief you do?
No, not in my pocket.
Where do you carry?
If I would have to carry a handkerchief, I would tie it as like a scarf around my neck.
I see.
If I would have to carry a towel, let's say, to a mikvah on Shabbos, I would wrap it around my body as a gartel.
What about push it for decoration?
That has to do with carrying on Shabbos. It's nothing to do with what we're learning now. What?
Going back to a father, under the age of 3,
Not 3, 6.
It's 6. But even if it's not my child, I should really prevent.
No, you're not allowed to give something forbidden to any child.
Right, even if it's under 6, even if it's not my kid.
Yeah, but I'm saying, even though...
I should even stop it.
One second. Halachically, if I see a 9-year-old kid, not mine, doing something wrong on Shabbos, he's writing, he's doing... I have no halachic obligation to tell the kid not to do it. The father does. Once the kid reaches the age of Chinuch, let's say 6, and the father sees his kid writing, he has a halachic obligation, rabbinically, he has a rabbinic obligation to stop the kid from writing.
If he doesn't know, he doesn't say, can you say to the father?
What?
If the father is not fully aware of it, can you say to the father?
You mean, usually when the father's totally unaware of what's going on, yeah? I just paraphrased your question. Do you have an obligation to tell the father the kid's doing it? No. No.
But if it's not your child, you don't have an obligation.
No, because there's no mitzvah chinuch. The kid, if the person would be bar mitzvah, and then I have an obligation to stop another Jew from, like we learned, the Kol Yisrael Revim Zabazah. They're all responsible one for another. So if I see somebody over bar and bas mitzvah doing an avera, I have a biblical obligation to stop them. Or at least tell them to stop, or whatever. If it's a kid under bar and bat mitzvah, if it's not my kid, I have no obligation to stop them, because they're not obligated in the mitzvah. The father has an obligation to stop the kid over 6 from doing things which are forbidden to do on Shabbos, or anytime. One second. But to give the kid something that's forbidden is definitely not allowed. What?
But if the adult is doing something wrong on Shabbat, and you know they're not going to listen to you, you tell them or not?
So that is a din, which is a very interesting halacha, because there's a contradiction even in Alter Rebbe's Shulchan Aruch. In Hilchos Yom Kippurim, the Alter Rebbe says one thing, and in Hilchos Basel Batan, in the first Chelid, the Alter Rebbe says a different thing. The din is like this: you have a mitzvah, you have a mitzvah to stop somebody from sinning. What happens though if you know you're going to tell them and they're not going to listen? Okay? So, sometimes the din is if it's an explicit sin mentioned in Chumash. It says clearly in Chumash, not something derived. Let's say somebody is eating a cheeseburger, okay? And if I tell him you're not allowed to eat the cheeseburger, he's going to eat it anyway. He might even put more mustard or ketchup on it to make it taste even better. Then the din is, because it's explicitly mentioned in the Torah, I have an obligation to tell him until he'll hit me.
Until?
He'll hit me. Now, if it's something not clearly mentioned in Torah, so then, like a rabbinic isser, then you say the rule, mutav shiu shegegin v'al yiyu mazidim. It's better for them to be transgressing accidentally rather than intentionally. Once you tell them you're not allowed to and they're still doing it, then they're intentionally sinning. Like this, you can assume maybe they don't know, maybe they're accidental. But that's only by isser not mentioned clearly in Torah.
It's about anything about eating, not physically, but
What?
verbally abusing, responding.
Are you allowed to verbally abuse somebody?
No. If you tell them, they don't hit you back, but they may be verbally.
Do you know there's a din in Shulchan Aruch that a parent is not allowed to hit a kid that's 16 or older. You're not allowed to hit them. Why? because it might hit back, and then you're causing him to do a terrible sin of hitting a parent, which is capital punishment. It says in Maka Aviv Imei Meisumas, right? That's but basically if they make you bleed. Okay? It's still biblically forbidden, but you get capital punishment, you get death, if the child hits the parent in a way that they're going to bleed. Therefore, like we were learning the other week, it's a big question, can a child in a lab technician to take out blood work from the father or mother? It's a big question in halacha, because you're causing them to bleed. And you're causing them a wound that's causing them to bleed. So in halacha, or even the medical world, we have here the doctors was kennen a crank. But you have, even in medical ethics, children should not do surgery on a parent. Why? Because you cannot be objective. You're too involved to be able to do it correctly. But in halacha it says, or let's say a father or mother, same no difference. They need a shot. Yeah, they need an insulin shot, and this shot, and that. They don't want to step to the doctors. But let's say they always bleed when you do it. So the din is, it's an interesting din. You're not allowed to do it unless if the parent wants, for their convenience. In other words, if you don't give them the shot, they're going to have to go in the car, schlep to the doctor, and like this. So then, if the parents want, you're allowed to.
Or if they specifically ask you to do it.
That's what I'm saying. If they specifically ask for you to do it, then halachically you're allowed to take blood from them. You can give them a shot, whatever. Even though halachically, if you make parents bleed, they're chayiv misa. What?
Along those same lines, can a father judge a case of his sons or daughter?
No. No.
My grandfather was a physician, and he would not prescribe anything
To his family.
to his children.
Well, a lot of doctors would prescribe medicine. They wouldn't do a surgery on them.
No, it wouldn't even give him prescription. They would send it to other physicians.
Okay, that's again, that's...
It was secular. Didn't know anything.
I understand, but I'm saying in halacha, that's not a problem. But a parent cannot judge a child cannot judge a parent. Now, huh?
Can't be any relatives.
You could be a relative if they accept it. If they accept to be a judge, everybody accepts them to be a judge, then you could. Not a witness, though. But ideally, a father... But, l'mashal, it's a Rashi and Chumash from a Gemara in Bava Kama, that a child will kill a parent quicker than a parent will kill a child. In the normal world, today's crazy world, everything goes. But it says in Pashas Mishpatim, it's late. If a guy's breaking into the house, so it says, if you're for sure that he won't kill you, you're not allowed to kill him. But if a guy's breaking into the house, you're allowed to kill him because he might kill you first. So the Gemara says, what does that mean? Rashi brings it down in Mishpatim. That if a son breaks into a father's house, you know for sure the father will not kill him. I'm sorry. If a father breaks into a son's house, you know for sure the father will not kill the child. Therefore, the child cannot kill the father first. But if it's a father breaking into a son's house, the son will kill him.